Hello, Fidelbogen here. To my fellow workers in the vineyard worldwide, greetings. In today's talk, I would like to discuss the counter-feminist thesis that feminism will never yield to argument alone. If feminism appears to make concessions under the persuasive force of argument, this is solely because the balance of power has changed owing to the pressure of oppositional forces. No, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. One way or another, it means they are yielding ground because not doing so would either make them look bad or pose a particular danger. This is true of almost any so-called establishment. We delude ourselves if we believe that the stakeholders in any major power structure will be talked out of their advantages by sweet reason alone. That is not how the world works. The two sides do not gather in a clean, well-lighted debating chamber and air their views in turn until one side or the other says,
"Yes, you have convinced me of the truth of your position, and from henceforth I will embrace your opinion as my own, and rearrange my entire life according to what it requires of me."
No, only simpletons believe the world works that way. The actual truth of life is a deal more tricky and treacherous, and the feminists are like any other established group entrenched in its power. They will not come out voluntarily, and they must be smoked out, or drawn out by a ruse. Whatever it takes. You already know that you've got the ability to argue them to a standstill or in perpetual circles. This has been happening for years between their side and ours, and likewise, you know perfectly well that all you can expect from them is dodges, debating tricks, manipulations, and outright lies. Your points, however well stated, will never be admitted or intellectually taken on board by them in any way. They're either as smug and fat-headed as French aristocrats on the eve of the Estates General, or as rabid as sans-culottes. Take your pick. Yes, we have been debating them for years, and we know by now that neither side will budge an inch. Neither them, nor, to be honest, us. But that is precisely the good news. Standstill means standing still. Literally, we have the power to argue them to a standstill. And do you know what that means? It means that all argument is at an end, and therefore we need no longer argue. Think about it. If they cannot win the argument, it means that we are morally entitled to go our jolly way in peace. Or if both sides cannot win the argument, it is incumbent on both sides to negotiate and to draft the articles of coexistence. But either way, it means that argument is ended. Our side gains a big advantage from this, a strategic edge. But a lot of pro-male partisans don't seem to realize this. Certainly, they know it is all in vain to argue with feminists, and yet there they go logging on to Usenet again for just one more twirl in the spin cycle with the infernal Heyerdahl device, just like reaching for just one more potato chip, even when you are sick of the damn things. Heyerdahl and all such vampire mechanisms are like perpetual revolutions in microcosm. In fact, they are feminism itself in microcosm. Engaging them in dialogue is like inserting a suction hose into your very own psychic energy pool. This will only drain you and fatten them. So, stop arguing with feminists. Stop fattening them. Just stop it. And understand the power this gives us. It means that we can effectively put feminism out of the perpetual revolution business. Think of it, no more perpetual revolution. And we know that if they relinquish perpetual revolution, they're toast. Very well. Given the impossibility of advanceful argument with the other side, We are henceforth under no compulsion to devise any moral justification which they will understand, for they have shown that their understanding is intractable. Clearly, the time for argument is past. No, that's a silly thing to say, because it was never present in the first place. We cannot and never could commence with argument. Mere argument can never be the first step on the road for us. Mere argument, as we have clearly stated, can never, now or ever, set the wheels in motion. Something more efficacious is required, just in order to get things rolling. All right, I say it is time to turn the heat up. It is time to play the boiling frog game. Simply put, this means escalating the level of criticism and general disrespect for feminism, floating it into the culture little by little, but with such finesse that they can't creditably call it hate speech. Still, it will ratchet up their mental tension, finally to the point where they will snap, do something rash, and, as it were, draw first blood. And after that, we've got them. But even if they keep their cool and don't do anything unseemly, we've still got them, because we will continue to grow in point of audacity, and they, having no alternative, will continue to suck it up, which will drive perpetual revolution into retreat. At least until they finally can't take it anymore, and finally snap, and finally do something rash. At which point, as aforesaid, we've got them. Or more to the point, we've got them where we want them. Counter-feministically speaking, your motto is that you've always got them where you want them. And if you're doing counter-feminism correctly, that is how it should be. Always. The campaign suggested above needs a jump start that will spark it to life. You need to begin somewhere, so begin by being steadfastly unimpressed, unpersuaded, unconvinced. Confront the force of all, or nearly all, feminist polemic or feminist theory with the brisk little phrase, "So you say." Let them know, in effect, that you find most of their case insufficient, and that in the sweet name of intellectual freedom and intellectual honesty, you'll not give it your rubber stamp of approval. This is not the same as arguing or debating. Rather, you are straightforwardly telling them that their words carry no weight with you, independently of what they think the truth might be. So, it all comes down to their conviction against yours. And there you stand in your standoff, miles above the rest of the world, on a barren, wind-swept mountaintop. You are straightforwardly telling them, informing them, that you will not play their game, and that barring some heavy-handed method which will backfire and burn them, there is nothing they can do about it. Let me say that again. There is nothing they can do about it. And that sets the counter back to zero again. So make it clear that they have a duty to consult with you and persuade you before they institute their policies or promulgate their viewpoints, and that failure to do so is a transgression on their part. Yes, feminism's cardinal sin is that of presumption, or usurpation, if you prefer. And they need to be told this. They have no legitimacy, no sovereignty. Therefore, mock them. Mock their presumption. Since we look upon feminism as just another ideology, and in no way sacrosanct, we feel entitled to shrug our shoulders and act smug about the whole job. Feminists are on a par with any group of cultic missionaries who might appear on your doorstep one day. They are just another pack of dusty competitors in the jostling marketplace of ideas. That is all they are. And it is high time they got off their high horse and learned some manners. They should not presume that you respect their presumption any more than they might presume that you believe in the Holy Ghost. and we are free to take our stand upon the fixed center of moral gravity which this provides. Simply put, the other side has lost its moral arm-twisting power. All we must do is look them squarely in the eye and say, "Sorry, no sale." They may go for the hard sell, but it will be in vain, and we will tell them so. Their perpetual revolution will smash headlong into the force of our perpetual counter-revolution, and there we shall stand upon that barren, wind-swept mountain-top. Ah, that glorious mountain-top feeling, the icy, invigorating air, the sparkling, crystal-clear sunlight. It is to our temporary disadvantage that our adversary has more state-constituted political power than we do. But this is where revolutions get interesting. This is where we either challenge the legitimacy of the state or finagle our way around it. For example, you should remind yourselves that feminism does not engage the quintessential core of your selfhood. It is simply a thought which you can bounce around inside your brain if you wish to do so, but it has no bearing upon you as you. So you don't take it personally when somebody depreciates feminism, since they are not depreciating you. Therefore, I believe it is perfectly acceptable in every way to say, "I do not support feminism." Where is the offense in this? Don't tell me it's hate speech. Again, I ask, where is the offense? Have you actually harmed anybody? Have you slandered anybody? Have you even criticized feminism at all? No, the only offense is that you have profaned an ideological shibboleth. Shibboleth, a belief that is widely held, but interferes with the ability to speak or think about things without preconception. The feminists no longer have the sole power to define feminism. We have busted their monopoly. Granted, they have the right to concoct theory to their heart's content, but we have an equal right to concoct counter-theory that will address what their theory inflicts at our end of the transaction. From our unique standpoint of original knowledge, we may decide if feminism merits our support or otherwise. And there is nothing they can do about it. They have presumptuously restructured the world, and by the same presumption they have restructured all of our lives. Owing to this act, their creation escapes their control and bleeds off into that penumbral region we call the femplex. The feminists are no longer entitled to the last word on what feminism effectively is or is not, since there is now more to feminism than feminism. We too are entitled to speak the truth with authority on that subject, simply because we suffer the consequences of it. The feminists are like the sorcerer's apprentice who started something that he couldn't stop. Such being given, it is appropriate for others to step in and bear a hand. After all, what good ever came of arguing with a feminist? So, don't argue with feminists, just tell them things. Fidelbogen, out, 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 out,
and rearrange my entire life according to what it requires of me.
No, only simpletons believe the world works that way. The actual truth of life is a deal more tricky and treacherous, and the feminists are like any other established group entrenched in its power. They will not come out voluntarily, and they must be smoked out, or drawn out by a ruse. The balance of power has changed owing to the pressure of oppositional forces. No, they're not doing it out of the goodness of their hearts. One way or another, it means they are yielding ground because not doing so would either make them look bad or pose a particular danger. This is true of almost any so-called establishment. We delude ourselves if we whatever it takes. You already know that you've got the ability to argue them to a standstill or in perpetual circles. This has been happening for years between their side and ours, and likewise, you know perfectly well that all you can expect from them is dodges, debating tricks, manipulations, and outright lies. Your points, however well stated, will never be admitted. Believe that the stakeholders in any major power structure will be talked out of their advantages by sweet reason alone. That is not how the world works. The two sides do not gather in a clean, well-lighted debating chamber and air their views in turn until one side or the other says,
"Yes, you have convinced me of the truth of your position, and from henceforth I will embrace your opinion as my own."
Hello, Fidelbogen here. To my fellow workers in the vineyard worldwide, greetings. In today's talk, I would like to discuss the counter-feminist thesis that feminism will never yield to argument alone. If feminism appears to make concessions under the persuasive force of argument, this is solely because the